political earthquake has just struck Britain, and this time Keir Starmer is standing right at the epicentre. Richard Tice has just unleashed a political weapon so explosive that it's tearing through Westminster like a shockwave. The polite debates are over, the warnings are over. Reform UK has gone from talking to acting, and their latest move has left Labour in absolute chaos. Their message is simple but brutal. If you support illegal immigration, then you can deal with it. In one stunning manoeuvre, Tice has flipped Britain's entire immigration debate on its head. He's taken the very migrants that Labour, the Lib Dems and the Greens insisted Britain must welcome and redirected them to the doorsteps of those same parties' councils. The plan is ruthless, strategic and devastatingly effective. No longer will working class communities shoulder the burden alone. Now, the elite political class that pushed for open borders is being forced to live with the consequences of their own policies. What we're witnessing is not just another political stunt, it's the beginning of a reckoning that could change British politics forever. It started quietly with a few whispers from local councils. Then, within hours, Westminster was in full-blown panic. Reform UK, fresh from its sweeping local election gains, has begun using its newly acquired council powers to strike back where it hurts the most, inside the strongholds of pro-migration parties. In Lincolnshire, the first battleground, Reform Council leaders have already passed emergency measures blocking the placement of illegal migrants in working-class neighbourhoods. But they didn't stop there. They went further, identifying Labour, Liberal Democrat and Green-run councils that have proudly supported refugees' welcome campaigns and redirecting those same migrants to their towns. The move was shocking, precise and entirely legal. Overnight, Reform turned the tables on the establishment. For years, these elite-run councils had voted for open borders and boasted about compassion, all while the real strain fell on struggling rural communities that never agreed to any of it. Now, those same councils are being told, "You wanted this." It's your turn. Richard Tice has done what the Conservatives never dared, turning the immigration debate into direct political action. Legal teams aligned with Reform are preparing ironclad paperwork to defend their right to block migrant placements locally. They've launched lawsuits against Home Office attempts to override council control and are pushing to make migrant relocation a matter of local consent, not central diktat. This strategy has blindsided Westminster. The Home Office is in crisis mode, Labour HQ is scrambling for a response, and Keir Starmer's silence has only made things worse. Inside Labour, panic is spreading. Sources close to the party say Starmer called an emergency meeting just hours after Reform's move hit the headlines. But behind closed doors, there's no unity, only fear. Labour councillors in pro-migrant areas are furious, accusing Starmer of leaving them exposed to public outrage. Their towns, once celebrated as symbols of tolerance, are now the front lines of Reform's counter-offensive. And as angry voters demand explanations, Labour's polished slogans about compassionate policy are collapsing under the weight of reality. Meanwhile, Richard Tice's message is echoing across the nation. If the British Army can live in tents, so can those who break into our country. His words are hitting a nerve, especially in towns where taxpayers have watched millions spent on hotels for illegal migrants while their own families struggle. Reform UK isn't just talking about immigration anymore, they're reframing it as a question of justice, and millions of ordinary Britons are agreeing. In Westminster, journalists are calling this the Tice Doctrine, a bold reversal that forces political elites to share the burden they imposed on everyone else, and it's working. Within 24 hours, Labour MPs began flooding private group chats, warning of severe backlash from constituents. Some even fear this could spark a new political realignment, one where Reform becomes the voices of the working class and Labour the face of the elite. But there's more to this than local councils or migrant housing. Behind the scenes, Reform UK's operation is being guided by a familiar strategist, Nigel Farage. Though he hasn't officially returned to frontline politics, insiders say he's advising on messaging, coordination and legal framing. Tice is the face of the movement. Farage is the architect. Together, they're creating something Britain's establishment never expected. A populist insurgency that's not chaotic, but disciplined, calculated and growing by the hour. In the media, the reaction is split. Left-wing outlets like The Guardian and The Independent are calling Reform's plan cruel and inhumane, but their attacks aren't landing. In fact, they're backfiring. Clips of Tice's fiery statements are going viral on social media with hashtags like #if you voted for it, live with it, trending nationwide. For every insult thrown at Reform, thousands of new supporters are joining their cause. By the end of the week, donations to Reform UK skyrocketed. Volunteer sign-ups doubled. And across the country, ordinary Britons, from ex-Labour voters in Manchester to disillusioned Conservatives in Kent, began saying the same thing. Finally, someone is fighting back, but while Reform's message spreads like wildfire, the establishment is running out of answers. The Home Office is paralysed, unsure how to legally challenge the new council decisions. Labour's press team is struggling to contain the backlash, and Keir Starmer, the man who once prided himself on calm leadership, is now facing the most unpredictable political rebellion of his career. As one senior Labour insider told reporters late last night, this isn't just a protest, it's an uprising. By the next morning, the atmosphere in Westminster had turned electric. Tense, unpredictable and on the edge of chaos. News cameras surrounded Downing Street, reporters shouted over one another, and Labour officials were caught rushing in and out of emergency meetings. Keir Starmer, usually calm and composed, looked visibly shaken as he was confronted with a crisis that no speech or spin could fix. Because this wasn't just politics anymore, this was war. Reform UK's counterattack had gone far beyond symbolic gestures. Richard Tice had mobilised a nationwide legal operation using every clause, loophole and precedent to outmanoeuvre the government. Dozens of Reform-led councils filed simultaneous injunctions against the Home Office, effectively freezing the relocation of migrants across large parts of England. The move sent shockwaves through the system. For the first time in decades, local authorities were directly challenging London's authority and winning. Inside the Home Office, chaos reigned. Lawyers scrambled to draft emergency orders, but every document was met with swift, surgical counter-filings from Reform's legal team. The result, total paralysis. Migrant hotel contracts were suspended. Funding pipelines froze, and thousands of asylum placements were suddenly without approval, all because one party dared to say no. Behind the scenes, the real battle was happening in secret meetings and encrypted messages. Reform strategists were coordinating with whistleblowers inside government departments, civil servants who'd grown tired of the hypocrisy. They began leaking internal memos, revealing just how much taxpayer money had been wasted. One leaked document showed that over £3 billion had been spent housing migrants in luxury hotels over the past 2 years. Another exposed secret government plans to purchase entire housing blocks for migrant resettlement, while British veterans remained homeless. The leaks went viral within hours. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags like #British Homes for British People and #Tice for Starmer began trending, racking up millions of views. Ordinary citizens were now part of the movement. Protests erupted outside local council buildings, where angry taxpayers demanded accountability. And for the first time, Labour officials found themselves booed and heckled in towns that once voted red for generations. But the real shock came when a senior Labour councillor, once one of Starmer's closest allies, publicly defected to Reform UK on live television. Her words sent a chill through Westminster. I joined Labour to fight for working people, but we stopped fighting for them a long time ago. Reform is doing what Labour won't. Standing up for Britain. The studio erupted. The clip went viral instantly. And within hours, 4 more Labour councillors followed her lead. The Labour Party wasn't just losing the argument, it was starting to crumble from within. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage, who had been silent for weeks, suddenly reappeared. A cryptic post on social media, just 5 words long, sent Westminster into meltdown. The fight for Britain begins. That post was enough to light a political wildfire. Journalists camped outside Farage's London home. Rumours began swirling that he was preparing a full return to frontline politics, possibly even to lead Reform UK into the next general election. Inside Conservative headquarters, panic spread like wildfire. Tory MPs began contacting Tice's team privately, exploring defection. One cabinet minister even described reform as a government in waiting. As Labour struggled to control the narrative, Reform began releasing data showing how open border policies had drained billions from local economies. The timing was perfect. Just as inflation hit new highs and small businesses were collapsing under tax pressure. To the average Briton watching the news, the contrast couldn't be clearer. While Labour debated compassion, Reform delivered results. Keir Starmer's approval ratings began to nosedive. Pollsters reported an unprecedented swing. Reform UK surging to 24%, overtaking the Conservatives in multiple regions. The political landscape of Britain was shifting in real time, and Westminster, once the home of control and confidence, was descending into panic. In an emergency meeting, Starmer demanded his media team shut down the narrative. But it was too late. Every attempt to brand Reform as extremist only fueled their rise. Even some traditional Labour newspapers began to crack. A headline from the Daily Mirror summed up the national mood perfectly. Reform says what Britain's been thinking. Inside Parliament, tension was boiling over. Conservative MPs accused Labour of losing control, while Reform's representatives delivered fiery speeches that drew standing ovations from the public galleries. One Reform MP thundered, "For years they called us racists. Now they call us right." The truth never needed permission. The chamber fell silent. Cameras caught Starmer's reaction, stone-faced, jaw clenched. He knew the tide had turned. But just as Reform celebrated its victories, something darker began to stir behind the scenes. Late-night intelligence briefings suggested a coordinated media campaign was being prepared against them, funded allegedly by foreign interests and political donors with deep ties to Brussels. Someone powerful was trying to silence the movement before it could grow any stronger. And if those reports are true, what's coming next won't just be a political battle, it will be a war for the soul of Britain itself.